Story 1. The Office Shadow. I work for a mid-sized IT firm located on the 7th floor of a pretty unremarkable office building. I've been there for a little over 3 years now, long enough for the hallways and cubicles to feel almost like a second home. Not because I love the place, but because I spent way too many late evenings there. My shift technically ends at 6 p.m. like everyone else's, but deadlines don't care much about official schedules, and I usually stayed until 8 or even 9 most nights. By that time, the whole floor was silent. Sometimes the silence felt comforting, like a moment to breathe after a day full of meetings and tech issues. Other times, it felt a little too quiet, the kind that makes you aware of how empty a place really is once people leave. But I never felt unsafe, not then. The first strange thing happened on a Wednesday night in September. I remember glancing at the time, 8:47 p.m. I stretched, saved my work, and grabbed my backpack. As I turned off my monitor, I felt this subtle shift in the air, a soft pressure change, like someone had just stepped into the aisle behind me. I didn't hear footsteps, but I heard something, maybe fabric brushing or a breath. It was faint, so faint that I almost wasn't sure I heard it at all. When I stepped away from my desk and turned the corner, I saw a guy standing near the far end of the office. He wasn't someone I recognized. Our office wasn't tiny, but it wasn't big enough for strangers to blend in. His cubicle was near the emergency exit, in the darker part of the floor where half the lights automatically turned off after 7 p.m. to save electricity. He was facing away from me, leaning over his desk, typing quickly on a laptop that didn't look like our company-issued devices. I could only see the back of his head. Black hair, messy, like he hadn't cut it in a while. Something about the way he typed felt urgent, almost frantic. I hesitated for a second, then cleared my throat softly and said, hey man, didn't know anyone else was here." He didn't react, not even a glance. Maybe he was wearing earphones? I couldn't see from where I stood. I didn't want to intrude, so I left. At the elevator, I looked back one more time. He was still typing, body slightly hunched, shoulders stiff. I didn't think too much of it then. Weird, sure, but not alarming. Maybe he was from another department, or some contractor I hadn't met. But the next night, he was there again. This time I left earlier, around 7:30, and still he was there, sitting in the same cubicle, typing on the same non-company laptop. The urgency in his movement was the same. His back was rigid, like he'd been frozen in that posture. I tried greeting him again. "Hey, working late too?" Silence. No earphones. I could clearly see his ears this time. Before I could say anything else, he abruptly stopped typing. His fingers froze above the keyboard, perfectly still. I waited for him to turn around. He didn't. He just sat there, unmoving, like someone had paused him mid-motion. A chill went down my spine in a way I couldn't explain. I left quickly that night. The third night is when things shifted from weird to unnerving. I was packing my stuff when I saw a reflection on my dark computer screen. Someone standing behind me, far down the aisle, next to the row of cubicles. At first I thought it was him again, but the shape was wrong. Taller, thinner. The shadow lingered for half a second, then stepped out of view. My heart jumped into my throat. I spun around nothing. The office was empty. Not even that stranger was at his cubicle this time. I practically speed-walked to the elevator. But right as the doors were closing, I caught a glimpse of movement at the same cubicle as the previous nights. A figure slowly rising from the chair, like they had just stood up after sitting motionless for a very, very long time. I jabbed the close door button like my life depended on it. By this point, I knew this wasn't normal. So the next morning, I went to HR. I described the guy, basic build, messy black hair, working late at night in the far cubicle with a personal laptop. The HR manager, Clara, frowned. "We don't have anyone assigned to that workstation. Actually, the entire row is empty. No one sits there. Deity. Deity." I felt a wave of confusion and embarrassment. Maybe he's new? From DevOps? Or finance? "There's no new hire this month," she said, "and no one should be in the office after 8, except security." "Are you sure you don't have the wrong floor?" I didn't. I knew what I saw, but something in her tone made me drop it. Maybe I was overworked. Maybe exhaustion was playing tricks on me. That's what I tried to tell myself. Until the following week, when things escalated. The following Monday, I stayed later than usual, not because I wanted to, but because our team was dealing with a server migration issue that decided to explode right before closing time. By the time I wrapped everything up, the office was pitch dark except for the motion-activated hallway lights and the rows of monitors still blinking in sleep mode. I tried not to think about the man I'd been seeing at night. I convinced myself it had to be some contractor HR didn't know about. Or maybe a security guy who liked sitting down while he worked. I didn't want to walk around paranoid in my own workplace. But as I zipped my backpack and started toward the exit, the hair on the back of my neck prickled that subtle, instinctive feeling of being watched. It wasn't like someone was next to me. It felt like someone was behind me, far down the aisle, standing exactly where I couldn't see without turning. I told myself not to look. And, of course, I looked anyway. At first, I saw nothing. Just the dark row of empty desks and the faint green glow from a printer in sleep mode. Then, several cubicles down, a head slowly rose above one of the dividers. It didn't pop up suddenly. It lifted slow and steady, as if the person had been crouching or sitting on the floor and was now straightening up inch by inch. I froze. It was him. The same messy black hair. The same stiffness in his movements. But something was wrong. His eyes weren't open. At least, not fully. They looked half-closed, lids heavy, like he was sleepwalking. And his head was tilted at an unnatural angle, chin down, neck bent too far forward. He wasn't facing me directly, but somehow I felt his attention settle onto me like a weight pressing against the room. I took a step back. His head tilted even further, like he was listening. That was enough. I turned and walked quickly toward the elevator, refusing to look back. I didn't run. I forced myself not to, but my legs were shaking by the time I reached the doors. The elevator took forever to arrive. Every second felt like someone was walking closer behind me. When the doors finally opened, I jumped inside and mashed the close button over and over. I only breathed again once I was on the ground floor, stepping into the lobby's warm yellow lights like someone escaping a nightmare. I told myself I was done with late nights. Whatever extra work I had, I'd bring it home. No more being alone on that floor. And that lasted exactly 2 days. The timestamp incident. On Wednesday, I decided to pull some logs from our internal system before going home, something quick, something that should have taken less than 5 minutes. But I hit a corrupted directory, then a permissions issue, and before I knew it, the office was empty again. I kept my eyes glued to the monitor the entire time. I wasn't going to look around. I wasn't going to check that aisle. Just finish the task and go. When I finally completed the last command, I hit print so I could review it later. The printer, the same one that glowed faint green at night, hummed to life. Then it stopped. Then it hummed again. Then it began printing something else entirely. I frowned. I hadn't printed anything except the log file. When I pulled the paper from the tray, my stomach twisted. It was a screenshot of a timestamp, a login timestamp. For my work account, 8:47 p.m. from 2 nights ago. But that wasn't the disturbing part. Below that timestamp was a note, typed in all caps, using our internal system's default font. He only comes out when you leave. My throat went dry. The sentence wasn't from any automated process. It looked like someone had typed it manually. Someone who either had access to my account or access to my computer. I felt a chill run across my entire back. I looked toward my desk from where I was standing. It was impossible to see clearly in the dim lighting, but something about the silhouette of my chair felt wrong. Like it wasn't empty. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. But the longer I stared, the more I was sure, absolutely sure, that there was a shape sitting in it. A faint human outline blending with the shadows. Then the chair rotated. Just an inch. Barely noticeable, but enough to show it had been facing sideways and was now turning toward me. I dropped the printout. I didn't even grab my bag. I sprinted to the elevator, full speed, footsteps pounding so loud they echoed off the cubicles. I didn't look behind me. I couldn't. When I reached the elevator and smacked the call button, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely keep my fingers steady. The elevator seemed broken, or slow, or both. Behind me, somewhere in that dark maze of cubicles, I heard a soft sound. The rolling of office chair wheels against carpet. Moving, slowly, steadily, toward me. When the elevator door dinged open, I practically threw myself inside. I didn't go back for my backpack. I didn't care. All I wanted was out. The next morning. I arrived early the next day. Not to work, but to check something. My chair. Specifically, whether it had moved. But when I went to my desk, everything looked perfectly normal. Chair pushed in, monitor off, nothing disturbed. My backpack was still there too, exactly where I'd left it on the floor. But there was something new. A sticky note stuck to the corner of my monitor, written in a handwriting I didn't recognize. Stop staying late. The ink had smeared slightly, like the writer's hand had been shaking, or wet. I asked my coworkers if anyone had left it. Nobody had seen it before. Nobody had been on our floor after 6 p.m. I didn't mention the man, or the printer message, or the moving chair. I didn't trust myself to talk about it without sounding insane. But I decided one thing. I was done staying late. Completely done. Or I thought I was. Because the real horror hadn't started yet. And the man in the dark cubicle wasn't done with me. I thought I was imagining things at first. The office was quiet, the hum of computers and the occasional shuffle of papers filling the space. But every time I glanced up, I felt it someone watching. It started small, a faint presence behind me, like a shadow lingering just outside my peripheral vision. At first, I convinced myself it was just a coworker walking past, maybe leaning over to ask a question. But the feeling didn't go away. Day after day, I noticed subtle things. My pens moved slightly when I looked away. Sticky notes I had left in neat piles were scattered. And once, a cold draft swept across my neck even though every window was closed. One evening, I stayed late to finish a report. The office was empty, the fluorescent lights flickering intermittently. I typed quickly, glancing at the clock, trying to ignore the growing unease. Then I heard a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, like someone standing right behind me. My chair creaked as if someone had leaned on it, but when I turned, there was no one there. Heart pounding, I told myself it was my imagination, a trick of exhaustion. I tried to continue working, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. Over the next few weeks, the occurrences became more pronounced. My emails were opened before I had a chance to send them. Files I had carefully organized were rearranged, and sometimes I would hear whispers in the empty office corridors. I began staying late less often, but the presence seemed to follow me, always just out of sight. One night, I arrived early, hoping to get some work done in solitude. As I set my bag down and logged into my computer, I felt it again right behind me. I froze, staring at the empty chair across from mine, but I could feel the air shift as if someone were breathing down my neck. The sensation was so intense that I couldn't move, couldn't even speak. Then a voice, soft and deliberate, whispered my name from behind. "You're not alone." I spun around. Nothing. Just the hum of the computers. Panic surged, and I bolted out of the office, refusing to return after dark. Eventually, I started noticing that other employees seemed to avoid the back part of the office where I felt it most strongly. Whispers circulated about the office ghost, a presence that lingered around certain desks, but no one would admit to seeing it directly. I stopped asking questions. Sometimes, I'd catch a glimpse of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadowy figure retreating down the hall, but every time I turned to look, it vanished. The sense of being watched never left me. Even when I was home, late at night, I would feel the pressure of someone standing behind me, the cold draft brushing my shoulders, and the faint sound of breathing just outside my bedroom door. I tried everything to ignore it, rationalize it, to tell myself it was stress or sleep deprivation, but deep down I knew it wasn't. One day, I discovered something chilling. Security footage from the night shift accidentally left on the monitor. On the tape, I watched myself working at my desk, typing quietly, completely alone, until a shadow appeared behind me. At first, it looked like a trick of the camera, but then the figure solidified, tall, dark, featureless, standing mere inches from my chair. I froze, unable to look away. The figure leaned slightly forward, tilting its head, and then slowly, deliberately, it raised a hand and pointed at me. I shut off the monitor, heart racing, my hands trembling. That was the last time I ever stayed late alone. I moved my desk closer to the front, in constant view of the entrance and other employees. But sometimes, in the quiet moments before anyone arrived, I would feel it again, the presence, cold and oppressive, standing just behind me. And though I never saw it move again, I always knew it was there, watching, waiting. Story 2. The Coworker Behind Me. It started innocently enough. I had just transferred to a new department, a quiet corner of the office where most people kept to themselves. My desk faced the wall, leaving only a narrow aisle behind me. At first, I noticed a strange chill whenever I was working alone, a subtle shift in the air that made the back of my neck prickle. I shrugged it off as fatigue or the air conditioning until I first saw him. Martin, a coworker I barely knew, was standing in the aisle behind me. But over the next few days, it became clear. He was always there, lingering, watching me as I typed. It wasn't just casual observation. It was deliberate, calculated. Every time I glanced over my shoulder, he would shift slightly, smile faintly, and then resume staring at my screen. I tried to ignore it, focusing on my reports and emails, but the sensation of his presence was suffocating. It was like having a shadow fused to my back, a silent observer cataloging every move I made. At first, I asked myself if I was imagining it. Maybe he had some habit, a nervous tic, a way of standing that just happened to coincide with my work. But then I noticed subtle things that couldn't be coincidence. Files I had placed neatly on my desk would be slightly rearranged when I looked away. My chair would be moved just an inch. Pens shifted. Even emails I hadn't sent appeared opened on my computer. I began feeling anxious before coming to work, my stomach knotting in dread as I approached the office, unsure if he would be there. One afternoon, I decided to confront him. I spun around as I typed, demanding, "Why are you always standing there? Can't you just do your own work?" Martin smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, and whispered, "I just like to watch. Make sure you're doing it right." My pulse spiked. I laughed nervously, turning back to my screen. But the air behind me grew heavier, oppressive, as if he hadn't moved at all. That evening, I stayed late, hoping to finish work in solitude. I thought maybe if I ignored him, he would leave. But as I typed the last lines of my report, I felt his presence again, closer than ever, almost pressing against my shoulders. I didn't dare look. I just worked faster, my fingers trembling. Sometimes I would catch glimpses of him in reflective surfaces, windows, monitors, even my coffee mug. But every time I tried to confront him, he would vanish, leaving only the sensation of being watched. Nights became the worst. I would dream of him standing silently behind me, breathing, never speaking, never moving. I woke up in cold sweats, convinced he was real, convinced he would appear the next day. I confided in a few coworkers, hoping for support, but no one else seemed to notice him. Some laughed it off, saying I was overworked or paranoid. Others avoided the subject entirely, which only made my paranoia worse. Weeks passed, and the pressure grew unbearable. My productivity dropped, I couldn't focus, and even simple tasks felt impossible under the weight of his gaze. One morning, I arrived early, determined to catch him in the act. I positioned myself near the entrance, watching the aisle behind me. Hours passed. Nothing. Relief washed over me. Maybe I had imagined it all. But then, as I leaned back to stretch, I felt it, the unmistakable, cold, suffocating presence right behind me. My spine stiffened, and I froze. Slowly, without turning, I whispered, "Martin." There was no reply, only the feeling of him lingering, like an anchor tethered to my back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my couch, lights on, laptop open, every sound of the apartment amplified. I kept imagining him, that silent observer, standing just behind me. Days turned into weeks, and I stopped trying to confront him. I avoided being alone. I requested seating near other coworkers. I tried every distraction, but the feeling never left. Even at home, I would feel eyes on me, shadows creeping along the walls, a whispering in the periphery of my vision. It wasn't the workload. It wasn't the office politics. It was him. The thought of spending another day feeling that presence, breathing down my neck, watching every keystroke, made me nauseous. I packed my things, said my goodbyes, and left, vowing never to return. But even now, months later, whenever I sit at a desk, alone, typing, I feel it, an invisible weight behind me, a shadow clinging to my back, reminding me that some presences don't leave, and some watchers never stop watching. Story 3. The Permanent Watcher. I had heard the stories from the others, the whispers about the office, about certain desks that felt wrong. At first, I laughed them off. I was new, ambitious, eager to prove myself, and I didn't believe in ghosts or shadows lurking behind cubicles. But the first week changed everything. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. I would sit at my desk, typing reports, when I felt a presence, heavy, watching, just behind me. I would turn quickly, expecting to see a coworker, but there was nothing. Just the empty aisle, the hum of computers, and the faint flicker of fluorescent lights. I told myself it was nerves, the stress of starting a new job. But then it happened again, and again, and it wasn't just the sensation. Small things started moving. Pens would roll off my desk, sticky notes would flutter to the floor, and my screen would sometimes display documents I hadn't opened. One afternoon, I noticed someone standing in the reflection of my monitor. A tall, faceless figure, motionless, staring at me from the aisle behind my desk. My heart stopped, and I spun around. Nothing. I laughed nervously, trying to shake it off, but the feeling never left. Over the next few weeks, the presence became bolder. I would feel breath on my neck, cold and damp, and the shadow always seemed closer, even when I looked around and no one was there. I confided in a coworker, hoping for advice, but he only gave me a strange look and said, "You'll see, everyone sees it eventually." I didn't understand at the time. Then, one evening, I stayed late to finish a project. The office was empty except for me, and the silence pressed in. I felt it again right behind me, taller than I expected, leaning slightly, almost smiling. I couldn't move. My hands froze on the keyboard. Then it spoke, softly, in a voice that was almost my own. "You shouldn't be here alone." I turned. The aisle was empty, but the air was thick, oppressive, like something invisible was pressing down on me. I fled the office that night, but sleep didn't bring relief. I would dream of the faceless figure standing in my bedroom, at my window, in the hallway, always just out of reach, always watching. Weeks later, I returned during the day, convincing myself that the office was harmless, that I had imagined it all. But the moment I sat at my desk, I felt it again. The figure was closer, pressing into the back of my chair, chilling my spine. And this time, I could hear whispering, not words, just fragments, shadows of sentences, in voices I didn't recognize, yet somehow familiar. I tried to speak, to call for help, but my voice refused to come. Every time I looked up, I could see a movement in the corners of my eyes, a flicker of darkness retreating just as I turned. Other coworkers seemed oblivious, working quietly, chatting, laughing, as if nothing was wrong. I began recording everything, setting up cameras, hoping to catch proof. One night, I played back the footage. The desk was empty, the office quiet, but there, in every frame, a shadow lingered, growing closer, merging with my chair, until it seemed part of me. My pulse raced. I stopped the recording. I couldn't bear it. I realized then that this presence wasn't just observing, it was tethered to me. It followed me, a shadow fused to my own movements. I tried transferring departments, even other floors, but the feeling persisted, the same oppressive weight on my back, the same whispering. Eventually, I understood. It didn't belong to the office. It belonged to me. I could feel it in my waking hours, in quiet moments, even when I was away from work. A part of me had been marked, haunted by something that didn't belong to this world. Something patient. Something that waited. I quit the job, moved to a different city, changed my phone number, but the presence never left. Some nights, I feel it pressing into my chair as I type, and I hear the soft, deliberate whisper, always the same: "You shouldn't be alone." I've tried everything. Lights on, company, noise. But it thrives in quiet. It waits, it watches, and I have no doubt it always will. I've accepted it now. Some presences are permanent. Some watchers never leave. And in the deepest, quietest moments, when I sit alone and breathe, I feel it closer than ever, patient and hungry for attention.